The Dominion had conquered 11 star systems in 300 years. They moved from world to world like a plague, stripping planets of their resources and enslaving any species too weak to fight back. Their warships were massive and dark, built for terror as much as battle. When their long-range sensors detected a small blue planet sending primitive radio waves into space, High Commander barely looked up from his command throne. "Another infant species," he said to his officers. "They still use chemical rockets and split atoms for power. This will take less than a cycle." His fleet was enormous. 17,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a city in seconds. They had crossed the void between stars for 6 months, and now they hung in the darkness just beyond the planet's moon, waiting for the order to advance. On Earth, it was a Tuesday morning. The sun rose over the Atlantic Ocean like it had done for billions of years. People went to work. Children walked to school. Nobody knew that everything was about to change. Colonel Daniel was drinking his third cup of coffee at Air Force Base in Colorado when his phone rang. The voice on the other end belonged to a general he had only met twice. The general sounded afraid, and that made afraid too. "Get to the command center now," the general said. "Something is coming." Ran. When he reached the underground command center, he found chaos. Officers shouted into phones. Screens showed satellite images that made no sense. And standing in the middle of it all, staring at the largest display, was Lieutenant Commander Kate. She was young, brilliant, and known for staying calm when others panicked. But even she looked pale. "What am I looking at?" asked. Pointed at the screen. 17,000 objects just appeared in orbit around Earth. They came out of nowhere. No warning, no approach trajectory. They just materialized. Felt his stomach drop. The objects on the screen were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, surrounding the planet like a net. They were not natural. They were not human. "Have they made contact?" he asked. "Not yet," said. "But they're blocking every satellite signal we have. We're blind up there." Across the world, people looked up and saw the sky changing. In New York, dark shapes drifted across the sun. In Tokyo, strange lights appeared at dawn. In London, Paris, and Cairo, the same terrifying sight filled the heavens. Alien warships, thousands of them, hovering in silence like judges waiting to deliver a verdict. Panic spread fast. Highways jammed with cars trying to flee the cities. Phone networks crashed. Governments issued statements asking for calm, but nobody believed them. The military moved weapons into position, knowing deep down that nothing they had could touch those ships. In Nevada, beneath the desert floor, there was a facility that did not officially exist. It had been built during the Cold War to study things the government could not explain. Dr. Cole had worked there for 15 years, examining strange signals and unexplained phenomena. Most of his work led nowhere. But that morning, his equipment detected something that made his hands shake. The alien ships were transmitting. Not radio waves, not light, but something else entirely. A frequency that should not exist according to human physics. Cole recorded everything and sent it to Washington, knowing that nobody there would understand it. He barely understood it himself. 3 hours after the ships appeared, they broadcast their message. Every screen on Earth displayed the same image, a creature that was vaguely humanoid but clearly not human. Its skin was gray and smooth. Its eyes were black and empty. When it spoke, its voice seemed to bypass the ears and enter directly into the mind. "People of this world," it said, "I am High Commander of the Dominion. Your planet has been selected for harvest. You will surrender your governments, your resources, and yourselves. Resistance is not possible. You have 72 hours to comply. After that time, we will begin collection by force." The message ended. The screens went dark. Colonel stood in the command center, surrounded by silence. Everyone was looking at him, waiting for orders, waiting for hope. He had none to give. "Get me everything we have on those ships," he said finally. "Every sensor reading, every image, every scrap of data. and get me a line to Washington." Lieutenant nodded and went to work, but as she pulled up the data streams, she noticed something strange. The alien ships were holding position, not moving, not attacking. They were waiting. "Sir," she said quietly, "they outnumber us by an impossible margin. They could destroy every city on Earth in hours. Why give us 72 hours?" Shook his head. "Maybe they want us to suffer. Maybe they enjoy watching us panic." But was not satisfied. She had studied military tactics her whole career. What the aliens were doing made no sense. If they wanted Earth, they could take it now. The ultimatum suggested something else. It suggested they were uncertain about something. Deep beneath Nevada, Dr. Cole had reached the same conclusion. The frequency the aliens were transmitting was not just a communication signal. It was a scan. They were searching for something on Earth, something they were not sure about. Cole pulled up geological data, historical records, anything that might explain what the aliens were looking for. And then, buried in files that had been classified for decades, he found it. Reports from the 1950s describing strange energy readings from deep underground. Reports that had been dismissed as equipment errors. Reports that matched the alien frequency exactly. Something was buried beneath the Earth, something old, something powerful. And the aliens knew it was there. As the first day ended and the second began, humanity waited in fear. World leaders argued about surrender. Soldiers stood ready for a fight they could not win. Families held each other and prayed. Nobody knew that the real battle had not yet begun. Nobody knew that Earth had secrets older than human civilization. And nobody knew that the alien fleet, for all its power, had made a terrible mistake. They had come to harvest a sleeping world. But the world was waking up. 48 hours had passed since the alien ultimatum. The world had not surrendered, but it had not fought either. It simply waited, frozen in terror, watching the sky and counting down the hours until the deadline. High Commander grew impatient. His species did not understand waiting. They took what they wanted, crushed what resisted, and moved on to the next conquest. This delay was unusual, ordered by the Dominion Council who wanted the harvest to proceed smoothly, but was a warrior, not a politician. He wanted action. "Send scout vessels," he commanded. 3 ships. Have them survey the primary landmass and identify collection zones. Do not engage the natives unless necessary. His officers obeyed. 3 sleek craft detached from the main fleet and descended toward Earth. They crossed the orbital boundary, entered the upper atmosphere, and headed toward North America. Colonel Daniel watched them come on the command center displays. Every tracking station on the continent followed the alien ships as they dropped lower and lower. Fighter jets scrambled from bases across the country, but everyone knew they were useless. Human weapons could not scratch armor. Lieutenant Commander Kate stood beside, her eyes fixed on the radar screens. The 3 alien ships were over Montana now, moving fast, scanning the ground below. And then they stopped. Not slowed, not turned, stopped. The radar contacts flickered once and vanished. The ships were gone. "What happened?" demanded. "Did they cloak? Did they retreat?" Shook her head, her fingers flying across the keyboard. No cloaking signature, no retreat trajectory. They just disappeared, all 3 of them, at the exact same moment. The command center erupted in confusion. Officers shouted questions that nobody could answer, raised his hand for silence, and picked up the phone to Washington. The conversation was short and unhelpful. Nobody knew what had happened. High Commander received the news with disbelief. 3 ships gone, no distress signals, no debris, no explanation. He ordered the fleet's sensors to sweep the area where the scouts had vanished. They found nothing. "Equipment failure," one of his officers suggested. "The scouts must have suffered simultaneous malfunctions." Did not believe it. In 300 years of conquest, he had never lost a ship to equipment failure. He had lost ships to enemy fire, to spatial anomalies, to the occasional act of suicidal resistance, but never to simple malfunction. "Send more ships," he ordered. 12 this time, heavily armed. "If something attacked our scouts, I want to know what it is." The second wave descended. 4 ships targeted the Pacific Ocean. 4 aimed for the Atlantic. 4 headed toward Europe. They spread out to cover maximum area, their weapons charged and ready for combat. Colonel watched them come. Beside him tracked their descent on multiple screens. The whole world held its breath. The ships crossed into the lower atmosphere. They continued for exactly 14 seconds, and then just like before they vanished, all 12 of them, simultaneously, without a trace. Pulled up the sensor data and found something she had missed before. At the exact moment each ship disappeared, there was a tiny spike in energy readings, not from the ships themselves, but from below, from deep underground. "Sir," she said slowly, "I think something down there is doing this." Looked at her. "Something where? Underground?" "Everywhere underground. The energy spikes are coming from multiple locations across the planet. Whatever is taking those ships, it's not in one place. It's everywhere." In Nevada, Dr. Cole had detected the same spikes. His equipment was more sensitive than military systems, designed to pick up exactly this kind of anomaly. The pattern was unmistakable. Something beneath the Earth was absorbing the alien vessels, pulling them out of existence like a hand snatching flies from the air. Cole cross-referenced the energy signatures with his classified files. The match was perfect. The same unknown force that had been detected decades ago was now active, and it was growing stronger with each ship it consumed. He picked up the phone and called Washington. This time, someone important listened. High Commander paced his command deck, fury building in his chest. 15 ships lost. 15. To a planet that still used fossil fuels and nuclear weapons. It was impossible. It was humiliating. "Full assault," he growled. 500 warships descend together, overwhelming force. Whatever weapon they have, it cannot stop 500 ships at once. His officers hesitated. The Dominion had rules about preserving fleet strength. 500 ships was nearly 3% of their invasion force. Now commanded, "Do it now." The 500 ships descended in perfect formation. They darkened the sky over 6 continents. Their engines roared through the atmosphere, shaking windows and setting off car alarms across the world. Colonel watched them come and felt despair settle into his bones. Whatever had stopped the first ships could not possibly stop this many. Earth was finished. But Lieutenant was watching the energy readings. The spikes were building, growing larger and larger, converging from points all over the globe. She had never seen anything like it. The entire planet seemed to be gathering its strength. The 500 ships crossed the threshold. They entered the zone where the others had vanished. The energy reading spiked so high that every sensor on Earth overloaded. And when the screens came back online, the sky was empty. Every single ship was gone. 500 warships, millions of tons of alien metal and technology, had simply ceased to exist. The command center was silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just stared at the empty sky on their screens. Was the first to find her voice. "They're gone," she whispered, "all of them just like the others." Picked up the phone. His hands were shaking. "Get me the president," he said, "and get me whoever is in charge of that facility in Nevada. I think we need to have a very long conversation about what the hell is under our feet." In orbit, the fleet waited for ships that would never return. High Commander stood alone on his command deck, staring at the blue planet below. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The helicopter flew low over the Appalachian Mountains, cutting through morning fog that clung to the ancient peaks. Colonel Daniel sat in silence, watching the forest blur past below. Beside him, Lieutenant Commander Kate reviewed classified files on a tablet, her face growing more confused with each page. Dr. Cole had sent the coordinates, a location that did not appear on any map, a facility buried so deep in the mountains that satellites could not detect it, had served his country for 25 years, and he had never heard even a whisper of this place. The helicopter descended into a valley that seemed too perfect to be natural. Rock walls rose on all sides, hiding the landing pad from view. Armed guards in unmarked uniforms waved them down. Cole was waiting for them. The scientist looked like he had not slept in days. His eyes were wild with a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. "Thank you for coming," he said as they climbed out of the helicopter. "What I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about Earth, about humanity, about our place in the universe." He led them through a series of security checkpoints, each one more intense than the last. They descended in an elevator for nearly 10 minutes, dropping deeper into the Earth than thought possible. When the doors finally opened, he stepped out into a cavern so vast it took his breath away. The ceiling was hundreds of feet above them, lost in shadow. The walls were smooth and curved, clearly not natural, and in the center of the cavern, glowing with soft blue light, was a structure unlike anything had ever seen. It was massive. Towers of crystalline material rose from a central platform, connected by bridges of flowing energy. Symbols covered every surface, symbols that seemed to shift and change when looked at directly. The whole structure hummed with power, with life, with something that felt almost like awareness. "What is this?" whispered. "This," Cole said, "is what has been protecting Earth. We call it the Warden." As if responding to its name, the structure pulsed brighter. The symbols on its surface rearranged themselves, and then a voice spoke, not through speakers, but directly into their minds. "Welcome," the voice said. It was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It was simply there, as natural as thought itself. "I have waited a very long time to speak with your kind." Stepped forward, his soldier's instincts screaming at him to be careful. "What are you?" "I am a defense system," the warden replied. "Created by a species your scientists call the architects. They seeded life on this world 65 million years ago. They built me to protect that life until it could protect itself." Scientific mind raced with questions. The architects, who were they? Where did they go? The warden's glow dimmed slightly as if in sadness. They were travelers, explorers. They moved through the galaxy, finding barren worlds and filling them with the potential for life. But they had enemies. The universe is vast, and not all who dwell in it are kind. The architects fought a war they could not win. They are gone now. Only their gifts remain. Cole stepped forward. "The ships," he said, "the alien ships that vanished, that was you." "Yes, I absorbed them. Their matter and energy now fuel my systems. I have been dormant for millions of years, conserving power, waiting. When they arrived, I awakened." Felt a surge of hope. "Then you can stop them. You can destroy their entire fleet." But the warden's response crushed that hope instantly. "No, I cannot." The cavern fell silent, stared at the glowing structure, not understanding. "You just destroyed over 500 of their ships in seconds. Their fleet is only 17,000. Surely you can." "My power is finite," the warden interrupted. "Each absorption drains reserves that took millions of years to accumulate. I have already used more energy in the past 2 days than I should have used in a century. If I absorb the entire fleet, I will exhaust myself completely. Earth will be defenseless against whatever comes next." Understood immediately. There are others coming, more threats after The galaxy is full of predators, the warden confirmed. They are scavengers feeding on the weak. There are far worse things in the darkness between stars, things that have noticed the energy I released, things that are now watching this world. Felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. This was not a simple battle. This was a choice that would determine humanity's future. "So what do?" he asked. "We can't fight them with our own weapons, they're too advanced." The warden's glow intensified. "That is why I called you here. I cannot fight this battle for you, but I can fight it with you. I possess knowledge that your species was not meant to receive for another 1,000 years. Technology that could level the gap between you and the—" Cole's eyes went wide. "You would share it, the architect technology." "I would, but there is a cost. Learning to use this technology will not be easy or safe. Your species will be changed by it. You will no longer be the same humanity that existed before this day, and there is no guarantee of victory. They are many, and they are ruthless." Looked at, then at Cole. He thought about the world above them, about the billions of people living in fear, about the soldiers standing ready to fight a battle they could not win. "Humanity has been fighting impossible battles since we climbed down from the trees," he said finally. "We've never stopped. We've never surrendered. We've never accepted extinction." He turned to face the warden directly. "Give us your knowledge, give us your technology, and then stand beside us. Not in front of us, beside us. We'll fight our own battle, but we'll be grateful for the help." The warden was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was something new in its voice, something that sounded almost like respect. The architects hoped that one day a species would rise from their seeds that would speak those words. In all the worlds they planted, across all the ages since their fall, you are the first. The cavern filled with light. Knowledge poured into their minds, overwhelming and magnificent. Felt himself expanding, understanding things he had never imagined. And far above, the fleet waited in confusion and fear, unaware that the prey they had come to harvest was about to become something entirely different. Something dangerous. Something human. High Commander stood at the observation window of his flagship, staring down at the blue planet that had humiliated him. Over 500 ships lost. No enemy casualties. No explanation. His officers whispered behind his back, questioning his competence, wondering if he was losing his grip on reality. He silenced them with his decision. The remaining fleet would descend together, all 16,000 ships. Whatever weapon the humans possessed, it could not stop an armada this size. He would burn the planet to ash if necessary. "Prepare for full planetary assault," he ordered. "We descend at dawn." On Earth, humanity was transforming. In the 48 hours since the warden had shared its knowledge, the world had changed more than in the previous century. Military bases became laboratories. Factories ran without stopping. Scientists and engineers worked alongside ancient technology they barely understood. Colonel Daniel flew an experimental fighter over the Nevada desert, testing systems that should have been impossible. Energy shields flickered around his aircraft, absorbing impacts that would have destroyed any normal plane. His weapons fired beams of concentrated force that cut through mountains. "How does it feel?" Lieutenant Commander Kate asked through his radio. She was coordinating the refit operation from the command center below. "Like flying a spaceship," replied. "Like becoming something more than human." Across the world, similar transformations were taking place. Submarines were equipped with hull-piercing cannons. Tanks were given armor that could withstand orbital bombardment. Satellites became defense platforms capable of striking ships in orbit. Every nation contributed. Every old grudge was forgotten. Humanity had one enemy now, and that enemy was coming. Dr. Cole worked directly with the warden, translating its knowledge into practical applications. The ancient system guided him patiently, explaining principles that human science would not have discovered for centuries. Cole felt like a child learning to walk, but he learned fast. All of humanity learned fast. They had no choice. On the morning of the assault, gathered his pilots in a hangar that had been converted into a launch bay. They came from every nation. American pilots stood beside Russian cosmonauts. Chinese aviators shook hands with European fighters. Old enemies became brothers in the face of extinction. "We don't know if this will work," told them honestly. "We've had 2 days to learn technology that took the architects to develop, but we're human. Adapting is what we do. Fighting is what we do. And today, we show these invaders what that means." The pilots cheered. It was not the cheer of confident warriors. It was the cheer of people who had chosen to fight even when hope was thin. It was the most human sound had ever heard. The fleet began its descent at exactly 600 hours Earth time. 16,000 warships dropped from orbit in perfect formation, their weapons charged, their commanders eager for vengeance. They expected easy prey. They found something else entirely. Led the first wave into the upper atmosphere. Behind him flew 2,000 modified fighters from 40 different nations. They rose to meet the descending armada like sparks flying toward a thunderstorm. The first exchange of fire lit up the sky. Weapons, designed to destroy cities, splashed harmlessly against energy shields that had not existed 3 days ago. Human weapons, enhanced by architect technology, punched through alien armor that had withstood 100 conquests. They were shocked. In 300 years, no primitive species had ever damaged their ships. Now these humans, these creatures who had barely reached their own moon, were tearing through their formation. High Commander watched his flagship's displays with growing horror. He was losing ships, dozens of them, then hundreds. Human fighters swarmed around his warships like angry insects, striking weak points that should have been impossible to detect. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "They were using chemical rockets 3 days ago." His officers had no answer. They simply watched as their mighty armada began to crumble. In the thick of the battle, fought like a man possessed. His fighter twisted through enemy fire, his enhanced reflexes responding faster than thought. He destroyed one ship, then another, then another. Each kill cost him something. Friends disappeared from his radar. Good pilots, brave men and women, vanished in bursts of fire. But for every human lost, 10 ships fell. The numbers were turning. Below the battle, the Warden contributed what it could. Ancient systems reached up from underground, projecting shields over cities, disrupting enemy targeting, feeding tactical data to human commanders. It could not fight directly without exhausting its reserves, but it could support, enhance, multiply human efforts. Coordinated everything from her command center. She saw the big picture, the flow of battle, the patterns of enemy behavior, and she noticed something that themselves did not understand. "They're hesitating," she reported. "Look at their formation. They're not pressing their advantage, they're holding back." Cole, watching from the Warden's cavern, understood instantly. They've never faced real resistance. Every species they've conquered surrendered or was crushed quickly. They don't know how to fight an enemy that pushes back. Heard them both and pushed harder. He, his pilots, drove them deeper into the enemy formation, made them feel every loss. "They thought we would break," he broadcast on all frequencies. "They thought we would surrender, show them what humans do when their backs are against the wall, show them we never stop fighting." The tide turned. Faced with an enemy that would not yield, began to retreat. First individual ships, then whole squadrons pulled back toward orbit. High Commander screamed orders that no one obeyed. His officers were afraid, his crews were panicking, and his empire was crumbling around him. By sunset, it was over. 9,000 ships had been destroyed. The remaining 7,000 fled toward the edge of the solar system, broken and demoralized. Human losses were heavy. 300 pilots had given their lives. Cities had been damaged, but Earth still stood. Landed his fighter on a runway lit by the setting sun. His hands were shaking. His body was exhausted. But when he climbed out of the cockpit, he was smiling. Met him on the tarmac. Her eyes were wet with tears. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Nodded, looking up at the sky that was finally, blessedly empty of enemies. "We did, but this isn't over, not even close." He was right. The battle had been won. But the war for humanity's future had just begun. 10 years had passed since the day the sky burned with alien fire. The world that emerged from that battle was not the same world that had existed before. It could never be the same again. Colonel Daniel, now general, stood on the observation deck of the vessel Endeavour, humanity's first true starship. It hung in orbit above Earth, sleek and powerful, built from a marriage of human determination and architect technology. Below it, a fleet of smaller ships patrolled the space that had once been filled with invaders. The Dominion had not recovered from its defeat. The news of Earth had spread through the galaxy like wildfire. A primitive species, barely capable of space travel, had crushed one of the most feared armadas in known space. Subjugated worlds began to rebel. Conquered peoples found their courage. Within 5 years, the Dominion had fractured into a dozen squabbling factions. High Commander had been executed by his own people. His name became a curse word among a symbol of arrogance and failure. The empire that had terrorized 11 star systems now struggled to hold a single one. Humanity had used those 10 years well. Dr. Cole led a generation of scientists in understanding and adapting architect technology. Cities were rebuilt stronger than before. Disease and hunger became memories of a darker age. Human ships traveled to the moon, to Mars, to the moons of Jupiter. A species that had once looked up at the stars with wonder now walked among them. Lieutenant Commander Kate, now Admiral, had become humanity's first ambassador to the wider galaxy. She had made contact with the worlds they had freed, building alliances, sharing knowledge, proving that the species that had defeated the Dominion was not itself a conqueror. Not all alien races trusted humanity, but many did. The galaxy was slowly learning that these strange creatures from the third planet of an unremarkable star were different from the predators that had come before them. But there were costs. The battle had killed thousands. The transformation of human society had left millions struggling to adapt. Not everyone celebrated the changes. Some wished for the old world, the simple world, the world where humanity was alone in the universe. General understood those feelings. He sometimes shared them, but he also knew there was no going back. The universe had noticed Earth. Retreat was not an option. On this particular morning, he had been summoned to the deep cavern beneath the Appalachian Mountains. The warden had called him for the first time in years. The ancient system had been quiet since the battle, conserving its depleted reserves, speaking only when necessary. Whatever it wanted, it was important. Took a shuttle down from orbit and rode the long elevator into the depths of the Earth. The cavern looked the same as it had 10 years ago, the crystalline towers still glowing with soft blue light, the strange symbols still shifting on every surface. But the glow was dimmer now, fainter, like a fire burning low. "Thank you for coming," the warden said in his mind. "I have something to tell you before I sleep." Felt a chill. Sleep. My reserves are nearly exhausted. What remains will take centuries to rebuild. I must enter a dormant state, conserving energy until I am needed again. But what about Earth? What about the threats you warned us about? The warden's light pulsed gently. That is why I called you here, to explain what is coming, and to give you what you need to face it. Knowledge flowed into his mind, gentler than before but no less profound. He saw the galaxy as the architects had seen it, vast beyond imagining, filled with wonders and horrors in equal measure. He saw the empires that rose and fell, the species that flourished and vanished. And he saw the dark places, the regions where no light reached, where things older than stars waited and watched. The architects did not just seed Earth, the warden explained. They seeded thousands of worlds. They left wardens like me on each one, hopping to protect their children until they were ready to protect themselves. "What happened to the others?" asked. "Most failed. The wardens were destroyed, or their charges were conquered before they could evolve. Out of thousands of seeded worlds, only a handful produced species capable of reaching the stars. And of those, only one has ever spoken the words you spoke to me 10 years ago." Remembered, he had asked the warden to stand beside humanity, not in front of it, to help them fight, not to fight for them. The other species said slowly, they asked you to protect them, to do the fighting for them. Yes, and their wardens did so until their reserves were exhausted. Then those species were helpless. They had never learned to fight for themselves. They were easy prey for what came after. Understood now. The warden had tested humanity, not with combat but with a choice, and humanity had passed by choosing to fight its own battles. You said things are watching Earth now, things that notice the energy you released. What are they? The warden's light dimmed further. I do not know entirely. The architects feared them. That is all I can tell you. They are old, they are patient, and they are coming. When? Perhaps years, perhaps centuries, perhaps tomorrow. They move in ways I cannot predict. Stood in silence, processing this final gift. The burden of knowledge, the weight of what was coming. He had suspected that defeating them was only the beginning. Now he knew it for certain. Is there anything else you can give us? He asked. Only this. The warden's glow brightened one last time and felt something new entering his mind. Coordinates. Locations of other seeded worlds, other species that had survived, other potential allies in the darkness. A map to the galaxy's hidden children. Find them, the warden said. Unite them. The architects dreamed of a family of species spread across the stars, protecting each other against the darkness. Make that dream real. Nodded, it was a mission, a purpose, a reason to push forward into the unknown. We will, he promised. We won't let you down. The warden's light faded to a gentle glow, then dimmer still, until the cavern was lit only by emergency lamps. The ancient system had gone to sleep, trusting humanity to guard itself. Rode the elevator back to the surface. He took his shuttle to orbit. He stood once again on the observation deck of the Endeavor, looking down at the blue planet that had the odds. Behind him, Admiral and Dr. Cole waited for his report. Around them, the crew of humanity's first starship went about their duties, young men and women who had grown up knowing that the universe was vast and dangerous and waiting. Well asked, what did it say? Turned to face his oldest friends, his comrades through the darkest days of human history. It said we're not alone, he replied. There are others out there, other species the architects created. The warden gave us coordinates, locations, a chance to find them and bring them together. Cole's eyes widened. A coalition, a galactic alliance. More than that, a family. The architects wanted their children to find each other, to protect each other against what's coming. Straightened her shoulders. Then let's not waste any more time. Give the order, General. Looked out at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, ancient horrors waited in the darkness. But somewhere out there, potential allies waited too. Humanity had proven it could fight. Now it was time to prove it could lead. Set course for the nearest coordinates, he ordered. It's time to meet our siblings. The Endeavor turned away from Earth and accelerated toward the unknown. Behind it, humanity continued to grow, to learn, to prepare. They had encircled Earth with fleets, and none of them were ever seen again. But humanity would be seen, throughout the galaxy, throughout history. The children of Earth were just getting started.